I think that's the #1 defense in the country in a lot of categories, and they played like it today, and we didn't.
We came for our lunch money back, wanted them to pay interest, and I know the bank's closed on Sundays, but we're trying to make it a deposit soon. So
in the gun, Greer, quarterback run, Greer, he got it, touchdown!
The fate of the game in number 7's hands. I feel pretty good about it.
Well, we wanted to make a statement. People talked about, us not having a very tough schedule to this point and all that. So I think we had something to prove here against a good team.
The kind of talent that we have is great, so for someone like me to have the kind of talent that we have, I'm grateful for it.
Was Statement Saturday as good for you as it was for those teams we just showcased? Welcome into College Football Live alongside Greg McElroy and, of course, Paul Feinbaum. I am Jen Letta. A very significant weekend, Week 10 was, because of the implications on college football playoff and the entire landscape. Let's start with you, Paul. The most impressive performance from this weekend.
Yeah, not to be Captain Obvious here, but it was Alabama, and it wasn't what we think it wasn't what we're used to seeing. It was the defense, that defense that has helped Nick Saban to 5 national championships at Alabama, but this time it totally shut LSU down and should have made the rest of the college football world very nervous.
Paul, I'll quote Dennis Green in talking about Alabama. They are who we thought they were. All right? The best performance of the weekend is Michigan, and it was a complete performance on both sides of the football. The revenge tour is on, and we know that this defense was outstanding. But we've been waiting for this offense to come along, and they came alive in a big way Saturday.
All right, I know that the Harbaughs have the saying, who's got it better than us? Nobody. But I think the Sweeneys could make a case for it. Dabo leading the team in a dominant victory, and his son Will with his first career collegiate touchdown. Impressive.
Welcome to College Football Live, presented by ZipRecruiter.
All right, so Greg and Paul certainly winners on this program, but who else from Week 10 action? Let's start with Alabama, of course. 29-0 over LSU. Any concerns for you, Greg, about this team going forward?
No, not at all. And honestly, there were no concerns going into the LSU game. I looked at these two teams on paper. I thought Alabama would win the game convincingly because I don't look at LSU's offense with any legitimate threat. Alabama still hasn't played an elite offense just yet, and at some point they will, whether that's against Clemson or maybe Oklahoma in the playoffs. Who knows? Maybe the Notre Dame or someone in the regular season finds their best stuff against the Crimson Tide. But no, there are no questions left. The biggest adversary to Alabama at this point is Alabama themselves. If they shoot themselves in the foot and make critical errors, that's the only way they can be beat based on how they've played over the last few weeks.
Greg, I'm not sure that would even be enough, but I am concerned about this. I'm concerned about the quarterback situation. Is that something new? No, but the health of the quarterbacks concerns me. Tua got banged up again every time he was hit, even by his own teammates after a touchdown. He seemed to be cringing. And what about Jalen Hurts, the most assured, best backup quarterback in the country? He didn't even play in the game. That's the only thing that can bring Alabama down right now.
Yeah, and if you look at Jalen Hurts before the game, Paul, they showed a clip of him walking with Dan Enos, the quarterback coach. He looked very uncomfortable, so it doesn't look as though he's going to return anytime soon. It might be this week. Who knows if he can play against Mississippi State. But if he's needed, it didn't look like he was anywhere near being able to go. But Mac Jones is a capable third-string quarterback. It's going to be a huge level of production drop-off from where Tua would be if he were to go down.
Yeah, I'm not sure Bama fans are ready for the Mac Jones era to begin just yet, so they need to hope that those other guys stay healthy. The schedule obviously works in Alabama's favor as they head into the SEC championship game as well. Other winners from this past weekend. How about Georgia and Michigan's playoff chances, guys? Clearly, with their big wins this weekend, they've made statements. Paul, let's start with you.
Yeah, Michigan is in fantastic shape, and that loss to Notre Dame at the beginning of the season doesn't seem particularly important now, and quite frankly, it's a pretty good loss when you consider where Notre Dame is. Georgia is in a position, but I really don't think Georgia is going to make the playoffs unless they knock off Alabama, and right now that's not something I'm betting on, Greg.
Yeah, Michigan's in a great spot. I completely agree with you, Paul. Their biggest hill to climb is against Ohio State in Columbus. And I look at Ohio State right now, and I want to play them. That's the first time I've ever said that about the Buckeyes. So Michigan's in a terrific spot because of how well they're playing on the defensive side, but their offense, too, is improving every single week. And as far as Georgia's concerned, this is not a year, because of how many good teams there are, in which I can envision 2 teams from one league getting into the college football playoff. And right now, if Alabama were to play Georgia in Atlanta for the SEC championship, and we'll see that game 4 weeks from now, I'm just not sure how Georgia keeps it competitive, given the way Alabama's clicking on all cylinders.
Greg, I have heard some people saying that Michigan could potentially jump Notre Dame in the standings. Any chance you see that happening? Again, head-to-head, Notre Dame got that win, no matter when it came in the season.
I can't. In a perfect world, it should always be head-to-head above all else. If their schedules and everything else, their resumes are comparable, the #1 indicator as to who should be ahead of who should be head-to-head. And I know that these 2 teams are completely different. You look at Notre Dame, they're way better now than when they played Michigan because Ian Book is now at quarterback. You look at Michigan, Michigan's a lot better because they're so much better on the offensive side of the football. So no, Notre Dame should always stay ahead of Michigan unless they were to lose a game convincingly against a team like Syracuse, which is about the only landmine remaining on their schedule.
All right, guys, let's take a look at who was smart under pressure this weekend, brought to you by ZipRecruiter. West Virginia's Dana Holgorsen elected to go for 2 and the win at Texas on Saturday, and it paid off for the Mountaineers. Here's Holgorsen on why he went with the gutsy call.
It was an easy decision. I mean, if you put the fate of the game in number 7's hands, I feel pretty good about it. We had that decision made before we even took the field.
What'd you think of the decision, Paul?
I loved it, and I'm beginning to really embrace Dana Holgorsen. It took me a while, but man, I'm on the Dana Holgorsen train. I think he's replaced Mike Gundy and Mike Leach as one of the most interesting characters in the sport. And I mean, I was watching that game on a plane, and I was like screaming. Of course, the flight attendant about threw me off the plane, but nevertheless, it was the right call, and it worked.
It was a gutsy call. It was, because if you look at the formation and the cat and mouse game that went on with multiple timeouts called by Tom Herman after they take a picture and they have a play called, they even ran the play through a slant to David Sills, called timeout just before David Sills caught that 2-point conversion. So to come back with your left tackle out, by the way, because he got ejected from the game earlier, and to call a quarterback draw that's designed to go around the left-hand side, that was just a remarkable call. And great execution, too, by his quarterback, Will Grier, and by the rest of the offense, especially that left side of the offensive line.
All right, Greg, but are you buying the Mountaineers as the best of the Big 12?
I'm not. Oklahoma is still the best in the Big 12. You got to beat them in order for me to feel good about West Virginia. And West Virginia, too. You look at the rest of their schedule. Now, they should have no problem with TCU this week. TCU is a shell of their former self. But playing Oklahoma State on the road in Stillwater, a place where many teams have gone this year and played really poorly, like Boise and like Texas. If they get through that win and are sitting there with only 1 loss when Oklahoma comes to town the week of Thanksgiving, that's when I'll start to become a believer. But no, you got to beat them before I can see that West Virginia has surpassed the Sooners.
All right, guys, those are the winners from Week 10. That means we got to talk about the losers and a glaring spot out west with the Pac-12. Obviously, at least 3 losses for almost every team except for Washington State. Paul, what is going on with the Pac-12 this year?
It's a good question. I know Greg was just out there, so I'm really interested to hear what he has to say. But, I mean, it starts with Stanford. I mean, I thought they would be a national championship contender, and they fell from grace pretty quickly. And then Oregon had it going and let it get away. It is a mess right now. And I wonder if Washington State can win out, whether they'll have enough firepower. My sense is they won't to get in the playoff.
The problem with the Pac-12 right now is there is not a very wide gap between the best team in the league, who right now is Washington State, and the team that's, say, 6th or 7th or 8th in the league. Just look at the Pac-12 South as an example. Arizona is actually sitting at the top of the Pac-12 South standings, which is remarkable considering Arizona in week 2 got their doors blown off by Houston, who's a group of 5 program. So the Pac-12 right now is in disarray because there is not a clear front runner in regards to talent. Yeah, maybe in record, Washington State is a cut above the rest, but as far as talent and depth and quality of play, they aren't consistent enough to be considered a team that is elite like some of the teams ranked in front of them.
All right, another loser from this weekend, guys. The state of football as a whole at the collegiate level in the state of Kansas. Between Kansas and Kansas State, they've got, I think, 6 wins between them all season long, 2 in conference. What's the deal with Kansas, Greg?
I mean, I feel terrible for David Beatty, and I hate that he's going to be fired effective here at the end of the regular season. But my problem is actually more so with Kansas State. Right now, if you look at Kansas State, they are tied for 9th with Kansas as the worst team in the Big 12. And this was supposed to be a year in which Kansas State could be sneaky good. At what point do we look at Bill Snyder and think, you know what, his best days are behind him as a head coach, and maybe this program needs new leadership? I'm certainly starting to think that that's a direction that they need to explore. Now, he has a 5-year contract extension, and he has earned the right to retire on his own terms. But when he does retire, they need to have a national search. He's trying to strong-arm his son into the position, and I'm not sure that's in the best interest for the future of Kansas State.
Greg, I think we all collectively respect what Bill Snyder has done, but I do not believe anyone has the right to decide when they should or should not retire. At some point, you need to go, and Bill Snyder needs to go. He has had a brilliant career, but he is damaging that every time he goes out there. This program is going the wrong direction, and yeah, we all know why he's sticking around to get his son the job. I've seen many coaches do that. Most of the time, it has not worked out, and this will not work out either. Bill Snyder, do all of us a favor, especially yourself, and announce that this is your last season.
Yeah, on the other side of things, guys, you know, you can question those decisions there. I question the decision to keep Beatty on staff for the rest of the season. I don't like anybody in a lame duck situation, and I certainly don't like that it might affect recruiting down the road. Why not give it to one of the coordinators, give that person an opportunity to audition for the job, maybe see if they'd be a good fit. So interesting stuff going on in Kansas, certainly a very down time as far as football goes in that state. Coming up here on College Football Live, we're going to play a little word association with the guys. What will they say about Clemson putting up 77?
College Football Live is presented by College Football Live, presented by ZipRecruiter.
ExxonMobil's unexpected energy has us looking at the Clemson Tigers. After a close call against Syracuse in Week 5, Dabo Swinney's team has been dominant, outscoring their last 4 opponents by 204 points, by far the best scoring margin in the FBS since October 1st. Welcome back into College Football Live. We're doing a little word association. Check your spelling, guys. Let's start with that Clemson team putting up double 7s on Louisville this weekend, Greg.
All right, I'm going to go with surgical, because I look at this Clemson performance, and when your quarterbacks throw only 19 passes between the 2 of them and 5 go for touchdowns, that's a clinical performance. And you couple that with the way they're able to run the football and play on the defensive side, it's unbelievable to watch this team play right now, Paul.
Yeah, it was masterful. I'm completely with you. And just thinking about the other side, 2 years ago, that when Bobby Petrino was putting beat downs on people,
it leaves some opportunity for growth in the weeks to come.
Jen, you should have been an English teacher with all these corrections here. I'm right with you. Disquieting. It was terrible. They nearly lost that game, and they were obviously the better team. But give Northwestern credit; they put on a pretty good show at home.
Yeah.
Dan Mullen not pleased with his Gators performance this weekend, guys. Let's take a listen to what the coach had to say afterward.
I'd be really disappointed if people don't want to play for themselves. I mean, they keep score. Someone wins and someone loses. Okay? I don't care what we're doing. You want to thumb wrestle me right now, I'm going to kick your ass. You know what I mean? If you want to come on up, I got you. All right? You want to go run stadiums, I'll kick your ass. You're going to keep scoring, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. I want to beat your ass. If we don't have that attitude in the locker room, you got a problem. I mean, what are you doing?
What are we doing, guys? I love how he explained to us how competition works. Greg, a word?
Yes, finally. I love it. If we're going to compete, I want to win. There are no moral victories. There are no participation trophies in college football. And right now, his team, it feels like they read the press clippings a little bit, and now is on a 2-game losing streak. Let's see how they respond this week against South Carolina, who's feeling good about themselves.
Yeah, I found what he said and how he performed it stupefying. I did not like it. You just got your ass kicked by Barry Odom. Own it and quit trying to fade the heat, Dan. That was a bad look for you.
I love that this segment has allowed some of us to bring out our well, normally 4-letter words, but that was a 3-letter word. But yes, a lot of that on this show today, which is great. How about this, guys? Proposing in the rain in Miami. I mean, brave, impressive. What do we think about that, Greg?
Bro, really? Like, come on. Look, I'm glad she said yes. Thank goodness. That would have been a disaster. But come on, if you're going to propose, you need pictures. It needs to be a big deal. Like, don't do it in the pouring rain when everybody's miserable.
I really couldn't think of anything when I found this word left over from Halloween, ghoulish. I didn't like the look at all. I found it somewhat creepy. I mean, do it on a pretty, gorgeous Miami day. Don't do it in the rain, and don't do it when your team loses.
There's a song about this. It's called November Rain. Hard to hold a candle. Maybe for our older audience, but still, that's what I thought of when I saw it. Good for him, good for her. Congratulations. Yeah. We wish you all the best.
You're just such a romantic.
Such a romantic. The Guns N' Roses, did that give it away? Coming up, guys, we're going to show you a kickoff attempt that went, well, interesting. That's next on College Football. Only one Power 5 conference title game is set, guys. That, of course, being Alabama versus Georgia in the SEC. But take a look. If the season ended today, here is how the rest of them would shape up. Not the best matchups there, guys. Greg?
Guys, they need to do away with divisions. Like, I'm tired of it. Because right now in college football, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the Pac-12 to a certain extent all have completely disastrously lopsided divisions. The SEC was like this for a long time until now Georgia has kind of ascended and it appears like Florida is following suit. They have to get rid of divisions, Paul, and figure out a way to put their 2 best teams on the field on Championship Saturday in order to give us the most competitive championship game.
Greg, in the SEC, they used to argue that divisions helped keep the late November games interesting. Well, that's not going to happen this year. But these things are all about money, as we know, and there's tremendous amount of TV dollars that go into the championship games. But that may wake a lot of the executives up and the conference commissioners, because Championship Saturday, which is always a fantastic day, could be a big snooze outside of maybe 1 or 2 conferences this year.
I do wonder how much of this is cyclical, though, guys, because for a while, Wisconsin had a cakewalk all the way to the Big Ten championship game. Right. And now, look at that division. It's sort of evened itself out a little bit. So we'll see how that rolls out. Let's go on to SMH, guys, the shaking my head segment of College Football Live. App State's quarterback throws a pick 6 off of one of his receivers' helmets. Of course, that was the only touchdown for Coastal Carolina of the day. App State did win, Greg.
Yeah, the best part is the person that's most mad about this is actually the App State defensive coordinator, because the shutout was destroyed as a result of this play. So I don't feel bad for anybody else besides the defensive coordinator for the Mountaineers.
Paul, let's get to Youngstown State. End of the half, they spiked the ball to stop the clock. Seems like a good play, right? Except it was 4th down.
Yeah, no, you live in infamy when you do that. Greg knows this. They still talk about Kenny Stabler at Alabama when he threw the ball, when he spiked the ball on 4th down, costing them a game. I don't know if this will hang with them as long, but it's a bad luck.
Situational awareness, guys. Finally, how about the Nebraska kicker who whiffed on the surprise onside kick? Now, he didn't think it was a surprise, right? He knew what the play was.
He did, and there's absolutely no excuse that this will also live on in infamy, Paul. This is
by the way,
as if it's hard enough. I mean, my goodness, the ball's stationary.
You couldn't do that again if you tried. I mean,
no, no, you couldn't.
I tend to agree with you. You could have him go up there 10 times, and he wouldn't be able to duplicate that effort.
Right.
All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging with us here on College Football Live. Remember, we've got the selection reveal on Tuesday evening in between games of the Classic. That, of course, on ESPN at 9 p.m. or wherever you are on your ESPN app. We'll see you next time.